But in the streets, they call him Mr. Make It Catchable. See, there's something called a catchable ball, layering the ball between it. Look, man, you can call it a duck when you want to. Shedeur know when to put that velocity.
There's no debate on this kid's toughness. He takes shots in the pocket.
Yep.
And to where the offensive coordinator's drawing it up and you know where you're going. You just don't see as much of it.
You don't see as much of it. And honestly,
that's the best over.
The entire quarterback room was supposed to have one clear hierarchy. Veterans were expected to lead, established names were expected to dominate the conversation, and rookies were supposed to spend their first offseason quietly learning in the background. But after day 3 of OTAs, that storyline took a massive hit because the player generating the most buzz wasn't the veteran expected to control the room. It wasn't the quarterback with years of NFL experience. It was Shedeur Sanders. And suddenly, people around the league are asking a question that sounded ridiculous just a few weeks ago. Has Shedeur already started making a legitimate push toward the QB1 conversation? What makes this development so fascinating is how quickly the narrative has changed. Just months ago, most discussions surrounding Sanders focused on his draft slide. Analysts debated whether he was overrated. Critics questioned whether his college production would translate to the professional level. Some even argued that the attention surrounding him had more to do with his famous last name than his actual football ability. But football has a funny way of changing opinions. The moment players step on the field and start producing, old narratives begin to crumble. That's exactly what's happening right now.
Shedeur got in a 7-on-7 and he made a tight window throw and it was like right on the money, and the next one was batted up in the air and picked off. So look,
reports from day 3 of OTAs painted a picture that many people didn't expect. Sanders looked comfortable. He looked decisive. More importantly, he looked accurate. Pass after pass found its target. Tight window throws connected. Timing routes were executed with confidence. Observers noted that he appeared increasingly comfortable operating within the offense, and that confidence was showing up in his mechanics. The ball was coming out on time. His footwork looked sharp. The hesitation that often affects young quarterbacks simply wasn't there. The completion percentage immediately became one of the biggest talking points. Throughout the offseason program, Sanders has consistently produced some of the most efficient throwing sessions among the quarterbacks in camp. Every quarterback battle eventually comes down to one simple question: who executes most consistently? Coaches love arm strength. They appreciate athleticism, but accuracy and decision-making usually separate quarterbacks from one another. On day 3, Sanders appeared to check both boxes.
Right now, you see what Shedeur is commanding, right? Shedeur is getting through in a very effective way, and I really like that. And I commented about that. We're gonna have
that created an interesting situation because expectations entering camp were very different. Many fans assumed Sanders would spend the offseason learning behind more experienced players. The assumption was that he would gradually develop while veterans handled the meaningful reps. Instead, reports began highlighting his efficiency and ability to move the offense. Every positive practice session added fuel to a growing conversation. Every completion made people look a little closer. The most impressive aspect wasn't necessarily the statistics themselves, it was the confidence with which he played. Young quarterbacks often struggle when entering NFL environments. The speed is faster, the windows are tighter, the margin for error becomes significantly smaller. Yet Sanders didn't appear overwhelmed by any of it. In fact, observers repeatedly pointed out how calm he looked in the pocket. That calmness translated directly into execution. And that's where this story starts getting interesting, because quarterback competitions are rarely decided by one incredible throw. They're decided by consistency. Coaches watch everything. They evaluate every rep. They study every decision. They pay attention to how players respond after mistakes. Sanders wasn't generating headlines because of one viral clip. He was generating attention because he kept stacking productive reps together.
Did he layer that and attack the middle of the field? Did he do something that some young quarterbacks are afraid to do? Hey man, they also call Shedeur.
When analysts break down quarterback performance, they often focus on physical traits first. Arm strength gets discussed endlessly. Athleticism dominates scouting reports. But once players reach the NFL, processing speed becomes just as important. Can the quarterback identify coverages? Can he make quick decisions? Can he put the football in the correct location? Day 3 provided more evidence that Sanders is developing in those areas faster than some expected. What really surprised people was the level of command he appeared to have over the offense. That's That's usually one of the hardest parts for young quarterbacks. Learning terminology, understanding protections, adjusting to NFL defenses. Processing all of that information takes time. Yet reports suggested Sanders looked increasingly comfortable handling those responsibilities. That doesn't mean he's a finished product. It simply means the developmental process may be moving faster than anticipated. Here's the part nobody is talking about. The pressure surrounding Shedeur Sanders is completely different from the pressure facing most young quarterbacks. Most rookies arrive with relatively manageable expectations. Sanders entered the league carrying national attention before he ever threw an NFL pass. Every practice becomes a headline. Every throw becomes a social media discussion. Every mistake gets amplified. That environment can crush young players. Instead, Sanders appears to be embracing it. The reason that matters is because mental toughness often determines whether quarterbacks succeed. Physical talent gets players into the league. Mental resilience keeps them there. Throughout his football career, Sanders has faced criticism from multiple directions. People questioned his competition level. They questioned his style of play. They questioned whether he benefited from playing under his father. Yet, despite all of that noise, he continues producing. Day 3 of OTAs felt significant because it wasn't just another practice. It represented another step in a larger process. Every positive report chips away at the doubts. Every efficient session strengthens the argument that he belongs in the conversation. That's how momentum develops in professional sports. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds through repetition. As more clips surfaced online, fans immediately started breaking down the details. Some focused on his ball placement. Others highlighted his timing. Several pointed out how quickly he worked through progressions. The common theme was simple. Sanders looked comfortable. That word kept appearing repeatedly in discussions. Comfortable quarterbacks tend to play faster. Faster quarterbacks tend to make better decisions. Better decisions usually lead to better results.
Of course, not everyone is ready to crown him. There are still legitimate questions that need answering. OTA practices are valuable, but they aren't regular season games. Defenses aren't showing everything. Contact isn't fully live. The environment remains controlled. That's an important distinction, but dismissing strong performances entirely would be equally foolish. Development matters. Progress matters. Coaches absolutely pay attention when young players consistently perform well. One reason supporters remain excited is because Sanders' strengths have always projected well to the next level. Accuracy isn't something quarterbacks suddenly learn. It's a trait they've developed over years. During his college career, Sanders consistently demonstrated the ability to place the football where receivers could make plays. That skill appears to be translating. When quarterbacks can consistently deliver catchable passes, offensive coordinators become more confident calling aggressive concepts. The growing buzz around Sanders has also changed how people view the quarterback room. What was once viewed as a straightforward hierarchy now feels far more competitive. Every strong practice session creates additional pressure on everyone else competing for reps. That's how competitions work. One player's success forces others to elevate their game. Sanders isn't just helping himself, he's changing the dynamics of the entire room. This is where young players usually make a mistake. They start believing the praise. They see positive headlines and assume they've already arrived. The NFL punishes that mentality immediately. Every year, players dominate off-season practices only to disappear when real games begin. Sanders cannot afford to fall into that trap. If anything, the recent attention should serve as motivation to work even harder. What makes his situation unique is that he appears to understand that reality. His approach has remained relatively consistent. He's focused on preparation, focused on improvement, focused on earning opportunities rather than demanding them. Coaches appreciate that mindset because development requires patience. No quarterback becomes great after 3 OTA sessions. Greatness comes from stacking months and years of progress together. Still, it's impossible to ignore what has happened so far. The reports have been overwhelmingly positive. The efficiency has been impressive. The confidence appears genuine. Those aren't guarantees of future success, but they're certainly encouraging signs. For a player who entered the league facing so much skepticism, every positive step carries extra significance. The conversation becomes even more compelling when you consider the broader context of his journey. Sanders has spent years hearing people debate his ceiling. Some viewed him as a future franchise quarterback, others viewed him as a product of hype. Rarely was there any middle ground. Now, for the first time, professional coaches are evaluating him directly, and based on early reports, those evaluations appear increasingly favorable. Another important factor is leadership. Quarterbacks aren't judged solely by statistics. They are judged by how teammates respond to them. Do players trust them? Do they command respect? Can they handle adversity? While it's still early, observers have noted Sanders' confidence and communication. Those qualities matter.
matter. Locker rooms naturally gravitate toward players who demonstrate poise under pressure. The more this story develops, the more it feels like a potential turning point. Not because Sanders has already won anything, not because he's guaranteed a starting role, but because perceptions are changing, and perception often influences opportunity. Coaches become more willing to expand responsibilities when players consistently execute. Additional responsibilities create additional chances to prove themselves. This is where it gets dangerous, because once expectations start rising, the standards become much higher. Fans who were excited about a few good practices will soon demand preseason production. If the preseason goes well, they'll demand regular season opportunities. That's the cycle every promising quarterback experiences. The higher you climb, the more scrutiny you face. For Sanders, that challenge may actually be beneficial. He's spent most of his football life operating under a spotlight. Media attention isn't new, criticism isn't new, expectations certainly aren't new. In many ways, he's better prepared for this environment than most young quarterbacks. That doesn't guarantee success, but it does provide a foundation. The larger legacy angle is what makes this story impossible to ignore. Shedeur Sanders isn't simply trying to make a roster. He's trying to establish himself as a legitimate NFL quarterback. That's a completely different challenge. The league is filled with talented players who never become long-term starters. Separating yourself requires more than talent. It requires consistency, discipline, and growth. Every positive OTA report becomes part of that larger story. Every accurate throw adds another chapter. Every successful practice session strengthens the argument that his ceiling may be higher than critics believed. That's why fans are paying attention. They're not just watching practice highlights, they're watching the early stages of a potentially important career. What's remarkable is how quickly the discussion has shifted from whether Sanders belongs to whether he can eventually lead. That's a massive change in narrative. A few months ago, people questioned if he would even receive meaningful opportunities. Now they're debating how high he might climb. That transformation didn't happen because of marketing. It happened because of performance. The challenge moving forward is obvious. Training camp will be tougher, preseason defenses will be tougher. Everything becomes tougher. That's the natural progression of professional football. The encouraging sign for Sanders is that every new challenge so far has been met with productive responses. Instead of shrinking under pressure, he appears to be growing. Fans love underdog stories because they create uncertainty. Nobody enjoys watching a script that's already written. Sanders' journey remains unwritten. That's what makes it compelling. The possibility exists for multiple outcomes. He could become a franchise quarterback, he could become a valuable backup, he could exceed every expectation or fall short of them. Right now, nobody knows. What we do know is that day 3 of OTAs added significant momentum to his case. The throws were impressive, the completion rate grabbed attention, the confidence stood out, and perhaps most importantly, the conversation around him continues moving in one direction. So now the debate becomes impossible to avoid. Are these OTA performances simply a hot streak that will fade once the competition intensifies? Or are we witnessing the beginning of something much bigger? Has Shedeur Sanders genuinely started overtaking the quarterback hierarchy through performance alone? Or is the football world getting carried away too early? Because if he keeps delivering accurate throws, posting elite completion percentages, and forcing coaches to notice him every single practice, the question won't be whether he belongs in the competition. The question will become whether the organization can realistically keep him off the top of the depth chart. And if that happens, then the biggest draft day storyline of the year won't be why Shedeur Sanders fell. It'll be how the rest of the league let him slip away in the first place.